Hi class, today's lesson is lesson 12-6, Making Predictions. The purpose of this lesson is to use probability to predict events. Let's look at two vocabulary terms that we need to know for this lesson. The first is population. Population is the whole group being surveyed. We see here a representation of the population. People go beyond the borders of this photograph. That would represent the whole group, as opposed to our next vocabulary term, which is a sample. A sample is a part of a whole group being surveyed. So rather than being able to survey all the people within the group, we take a small sample, a part of the group, and conduct a survey with them. Let's go ahead and take a look at first example. Our first example says, based on a sample survey, an airline claims that its flights have 92% probability of being on time. Out of 1,000 flights, how many would you predict will be on time? Well, 92% probability. Oops, this popped in. Let me pop that back out. 92% probability means per 100. 92 out of 100 flights would be on time. To solve this problem, we need to take 92% out of 1,000 flights, or 92% of 1,000. What's 92% of 1,000? To solve it proportionally, we go ahead and remember the is over of. 92% of 1,000 means 1,000, the number 1,000 will go as a denominator. Here we are. 92% of 1,000 is X. Let me remove the is and of and move this part of the ratio over just a bit. Now we simply solve this using cross products, making sure that we do have an equal sign in between the two ratios. We can do cross products. It would become 92 times 1,000 and 100 times X, which looks like this. 100X equals 92,000. Well, in order to solve for X, we need to isolate the variable by taking the inverse operation of times 100, which is divide by 100. And what we do to one side, we do to the other. When we solve for X, 92,000 divided by 100 gives us 920. Example number 2. If you roll a number cube 24 times, how many times do you expect to roll a 5? Well, for a fair number cube, the probability of rolling a 5 is 1 out of 6. 1 out of 6 for any of those sides. So, what does that mean? Well, 1 out of 6 times out of 24. So 1/6 of 24 is over of again. 1/6 of 24 means 24 is going to go as a denominator of the ratio. 1/6 of 24 is a certain number that we have to solve. Once again, let me move this ratio out so I can complete the proportion this way. Now I just need to solve using cross products. Making sure I have an equal sign between the two ratios, I go ahead and do cross products. And what I end up with is 6 times X on one side, 1 times 24 is 24. Now I just solve it algebraically. In order to solve for X, I need to get rid of a times 6. And so I isolate the variable by dividing by 6 on both sides, where X would equal 4. Number 3, the stadium sells yearly parking passes. If you have a parking pass, you can park at the stadium for any event during that year. Based on a sample group of fans, the managers of the stadium estimate that the probability that a person with a pass will attend any one event is 80%. The parking lot has 300 spaces. If the managers want the lot to be full at every event, how many passes should they sell? Well, in this problem, we would think, which would be an unreality, ideally, if we sold 300, we would expect 300 parking places at every event to be full, but that's not the reality. The reality is that 80% is the number of parking spaces that are occupied. 80% of what number would give us 300? So it's going to be a bigger number. What ideally these people who sell the parking want, they want to fill up those spaces. So they're going to sell more than 300 spaces available. They're going to send something over 300. So what is that number? What is that number where all the parking places will be full at every event? Because people are not going to be able to go to the games, right? So 80% of what equals 300? Well, first we take 80%. And we figure out, well, what is the ratio equivalent to that? Well, it's 80 of 100. Or I should say 80 100ths. 80% of 300. Remember the is over of again? Here it is. Of means that 300, the of means we're trying to find out what the total amount would be. 80% of this number is going to be 300. So what does our proportion look like? Well, it looks something like this. 80 over 100 equals 300 over x, where we know we want 300. 80% of a number is 300. Of what number is what we're looking for? Let me go ahead and take that particular ratio out so we can form this proportion. 80 over 100 is over of. We're trying to find the of. Now we can do cross products. We have an equal sign between the two ratios. 80 times x, 300 times 100. We have 30,000 here. 80 times x over here. Now we just need to solve for x. Divide both sides by 80, the inverse operation, in order to isolate that variable x. And x equals 375, or 375 equals x. They need to sell 375 spaces in order to fill every parking space for every event. They have to actually sell more tickets or more passes for parking spaces than they have parking spaces. But that's because only 80%, 8 out of 10 of those spaces are filled every event. So they're going to try to maximize their money. Now, here's your complete the problem. Based on a sample survey, a local newspaper states that 12% of the city's residents have volunteered at an animal shelter. Out of 5,000 residents, how many would you predict have volunteered at the animal shelter? 12% of the city's residents have volunteered at the animal shelter. Out of 5,000 residents, how many would you predict have volunteered at the animal shelter? So 12% of 5,000. Well, here's the follow-on question. How do you know your answer is reasonable? So there's two parts. You're not only going to solve it, and I've kind of set up the proportion or part of the proportion for you here, but you're also going to determine how your answer is reasonable. How? Maybe by simple estimation right at the beginning or at the end of your problem solving. All right, we'll see you in class.